Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever around the world. Welcome to X-Planet Live. My name is Lionel Miranda, and today we are going to talk about our 40K Invitational. We're going to discuss lists. We're going to do a bit of a breakdown. We're not going to discuss every list because that would take forever. 40K lists are a lot more complex than the AOS side of the ledger, that is for sure. And there's a lot more to talk about, lots of little cool interactions. If we were going to deep dive every list, we'd be here for a really, really long time. So instead, we are going to review the top 8 seeded players. Now, I'll describe seeding in the next few moments. Actually, let's just discuss it right now. So what does that mean, seeded? So basically, we took all top 16 players from 5 events. So over the last 5 months, we've been running tournaments here in the shop. And then at the top of the list is the player that scored the most. And then at the bottom, the 16th player is the person who scored the least. Simple as that. So how do we do our pairings? Well, if you do seeded pairings, the way that works is the top player plays the lowest player. Now, why do you do that? It's for climax. The idea here is we want to take the top 2 players and potentially have them facing off for everything at the end of the invitational. Now, that's the narrative, but what actually happens sometimes is upsets. And what does that mean? Sometimes the top player can get eliminated by the lowest player, and then it is a wild, wild west on who takes it all. So, actually, Gaio, if you want to do me a favor, my friend, since we're talking about brackets, let's just go to the brackets right now. So if you get that image up on the screen for the folks, I would appreciate you. Here's our bracket system broken down. So at the top left-hand corner of your screen, you have Adel. Now, Adel is the top-seeded player at the event. Scored the highest, came out to a whole bunch of tournaments, and dominated, so to speak. Adel is facing off against Fatty, who is the lowest seeded player that is coming out. Now, we don't know what's going to happen, but odds are Adel will proceed forward. But Fatty, of course, has something to say about it, and who knows? Maybe he takes out Adel, and then things get kind of crazy. Now, if you look at the bracket system on your screen, it is actually separated into 2 groups. There's an upper half and a lower half. And the upper half is Group A, and the bottom half is Group B. In Group B, the highest seeded player in Group B is Nick J. I don't know how to actually pronounce his name. We call him the Gigolo, because every event he comes out to, he is there to have a good time. So Nick, being the second highest seeded player, has this whole entire group onto himself. And of course, as you see in the graph, they can break down and potentially meet at the end. And of course, all of their opponents have aspirations as well. So all that can, go south, so to speak. But that's the idea of seeding. Now, it is an elimination style event, as you could tell. So only one player from each pairing is going to advance forward. And in this invitational, every player that got invited to the invitational is going to win $50 in in-store credit. And every single time they move forward, they get another $50 in in-store credit. The top players will also be playing for cool trophies. And there'll be a first, second, and third trophy with also a best painted being awarded in the first round of the event before or after elimination, so that if the guy who won best painted, he can just go home with his cool trophy. So there it is. So that's how the pairings work. That's how the groups work. Let's go to a little interesting little graph, and it would be interesting if there was more dramatic, I guess. Guy, if you could get the factions graph, little pie chart there up for the folks, that would also be much appreciated. This is just a simple breakdown. I thought it would be kind of fun to actually look at the factions and distribution. It is basically in thirds. almost every faction really is being played, which is actually pretty nuts. There is a slight slant toward the Imperial side of things, and to be honest, that is no surprise. In fact, what is a surprise is that it isn't even more slanted toward Imperial, as Imperial forces in general are a huge part of most tournaments. But in this case, we almost got it a third. Imperials are 38, and then Chaos and Xenos are 31 apiece. So it's interesting. Just a little bit of information for you. I thought it was kind of neat that basically all of the factions or races or sides are being almost equally represented at the event. Okay, so that's that. Let us start diving into the actual lists. Now, there's a lot happening in these lists. Like I said, 40K has got all sorts of things and interactions. I am going to do my absolute best to try to cover as many of these bases as I possibly can. The lens I'm looking at on deciding whether a list is quote-unquote good or whether I like it is I have a personal rule. I call it the rules of threes. And the idea of the rules of threes when I'm approaching 40K is I want something in my list that kills tanks at a distance. I want something in my list that kills infantry at a distance. And I want something in my list that twists off heads if things get up close and personal. In each one of those sections, I want 3 things that do that. So 3 things that kill tanks at a distance, 3 things that kill infantry at a distance, and 3 things that can pull out the knives and the shivs and get up close and personal, like I said. This is basically a redundancy rule of thumb. And I find when I'm playing 40K, generally speaking, I find that that's a great rule of thumb to follow. And whether someone consciously does that or not, I find when I'm looking at competitive lists that regardless of whether they are consciously doing that or not, that is usually the case. Redundancy, very, very important. When looking through that frame or that kind of paradigm, you can have units do multiple roles. Like for instance, you could have an anti-tank and an anti-infantry option, fill out both, so that in a more elite army force, you can cover your bases with one model. The downside, of course, of that is you become extremely susceptible to having downgrading as soon as any of those pieces start leaving your army. So generally speaking, I like to have dedicated roles to a lot of my units in 40K. And although it's cool to have a model potentially do multiple roles, unless it's really robust, i.e. Knights or Rogel Dorn, I generally speaking want my units to be dedicated toward a task at hand. All right, so that's the general philosophy. Let's look at lists. All right, let's start off with Adil Walia, top-seeded player at the actual event. My man is playing Ultramarines for the event, so Space Marines specifically. If you hadn't known, well, guess what? The cool Army rule for Space Marines is Oath of the Moment, and that's pick a unit and say you're gonna die. How does it do that? Well, when you pick that unit, your whole entire army gets rerolled to hits versus that unit, and because it is Ultramarines, honestly, or plainly, using only one book, they also get +1 to wound. That is going to be absolutely huge when we start talking about the rest of his list. He is playing Iron Storm Spearhead, and each unit can reroll 1 hit or wound or damage roll with Iron Storm. Now, already you can see some of the synergies here with just those 2 rules. You can oath the target, get rerolls to hit, get a +1 to wound. So usually that puts you at wounding on 2s or 3s. Reroll to wound almost basically means definitively you're going to get a wound. it's going to go through. So at +1 to wound, almost certainly he'll also potentially be able to reroll the damage to make sure he inflicts the damage. So really, really powerful combination, and one of the many reasons why Ultramarines are so freaking good. The other really big reason why they're so good is their heroes. Speaking of which, let's talk about it. Reboot Gilliman. Reboot is an absolute beast. Not only can he kick face in if it gets to that, but mostly he is an absolute buff machine. Reboot can not only Oath of the Moment once, but unlock a second Oath of the Moment, which is just absolutely fantastic. Anything around him that, and by around him I mean within 12 inches, tries to do a strat, he can actually reduce the cost of it as well. So he is the strategist extraordinaire. He absolutely lifts his army. To be able to spit out 2 Oath of the Moments against another person's army is just absolutely backbreaking. And generally speaking, you'll be able to delete those units fairly consistently, is the word I'm looking for. Also in his list is a Tech Marine. Now, why is that the case? Well, as you're looking at the rest of it, it is incredibly vehicle heavy. He's got a ton of armor, and a Tech Marine naturally synergizes with that. Tech Marine, if it's close to a vehicle, 3 inches, gets blown up. So the only way you're going to be able to target him is if you get within 12, which is a little bit difficult. And then he can also heal during the command phases, D3 damage to robots and vehicles, whatever, around him. So good all round. Now, the other thing I'm doing with these lists is I am going to be reviewing some of the strats. What I did is I restricted myself to picking top 3 strats in each of the lists that I'm actually diving into. I am not saying that these are the absolute best. What I'm saying is these were the ones that appealed to me the most, and I want to discuss with you. First off, one of those strats, and this again, to get a whole picture, right? You got the army rule, you got the detachment rule, and the heroes are the heart and soul of almost every list, in combination with the actual stratagems as well. So the strat, for 1 CP, we have Ancient Fury. This is Walker's improved movement, toughness, leadership, and OC by 1, and +1 to hit. He's taken, in his actual list, he has 3 Ballistus Dreads. Yeah, 3 Ballistus Dreads in it. So getting those Ballistus Dreads, one of those Ballistus Dreads to be just super dread for a moment. Again, he needs to get bring down a target as much as he can. He can do that. What's crazy is he could oath 2 targets and then have this dread pick on a different third target, because he doesn't need all that smoothing of math, so to speak, and actually potentially consistently bring down 3 targets. And I'm pretty sure that is what Adel's aiming for. Another fantastic strat, at least I thought so, is Vengeful Animus. And that's an auto explode. I love auto explode strats. They do a little bit of splash damage. It doesn't sound like a big deal until it is absolutely a big deal. And what do I mean by that? Obviously, if you, in a game, random things can happen, surprise charges can happen, and in that situation, that surprise charge can mean really nothing, splashing a guy with like D3 mortal wounds. But if you position correctly, and you time it right, and you ground the other guy's forces on the way in, when he finally makes it to your lines, to be able to just go 1 CP, D3 mortal wounds, and potentially have that threat just die right there is just absolutely fantastic. And it's D3 mortal, so it's 1, 2, 3. How many times has this guy been left on 1 wound? It's like a guarantee unless he has a feel no pain. And a feel no pain in 40K is very rare. So now let's go over to the third most favorite strat is Mercy is weakness. If an enemy unit is below strength, friendlies get sustained hits, 1. And if a vehicle, it gets crit hit on 5s. So you can go in, soften a target, and then potentially follow it up with a more serious hammer, ranged hammer, and potentially unlock even more damage. Absolutely phenomenal. The downside with this one, it does cost 2 CP. The upside is, of course, is you have Reboot going, hey, you're going to perform this job much better. And that robot or tank will just go, yeah, I will. And it only costs 1 CP. In the rest of his list, he has a battle line unit of intercessors there to camp and stick an objective. Probably camp the back, maybe move forward, but probably just zoning out the back. Then, like I said, he has 3 ballistas dreadnoughts, incredible anti-armor options. And speaking of anti-armor, he has 2 gladiator lancers. He's got a Reaper, which is a whole whackload of anti-infantry. A scout squad to perform battle tactics, go up and down when he needs to. And then 3 Vindicator tanks. So if we look through the lens of my rule of 3s, does he have 3 things that can crush tanks at a distance? He has piles, more than enough, more than what he needed to do whatever he wants when talking about busting up armor. Does he have 3 things that can eliminate infantry at a distance? Between the Reaper and I would say the Vindicators, which also have blast, he's just finding that category as well. Does he have 3 things that twist off heads when things get up close and personal? And that is where he potentially would have weakness. If I was facing off against Adel, I would pretty much try to close in on his lines almost with impunity, understanding that he only has Reboot to actually stand toe-to-toe with anything. But of course, folks, you have to get through all that armor first. Good luck with that. All right, so Adel, very, very solid list. I've seen him pilot this before. It's also very, very quick. So great list all in all. Next list, we got the second seedest highest player, and that would be Nicholas the Gigolo. Nick is busting out Astra Militarum. And if you've not played against Astra Militarum, they have a really, really cool army rule called Voice of Command, and these are orders. Units can receive an order once. They can't receive multiple orders on the same unit. The orders can be move, 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 which adds +3 to the unit's move. Fix bayonets, which adds +1 to its weapon skill. Take cover, which is +1 to its save. Take aim, +1 to ballistic skill. First rank fire, second rank fire, +1 attack to rapid fire weapons. And then duty and honor, +1 leadership, +1 OC. All right, so only characters in an army can issue those orders. So he does have to worry about bubbles. He does have to worry about ranges, but because you're the person deciding where to place things, as long as you keep that in the forefront of your mind, generally speaking, it's not hard to get an order to a thing you want to receive. His detachment is Hammer of the Emperor. The Hammer of the Emperor has got a very, very cool rule. It's a squadron. It's called Iron Treads. 1 unit in his army can has a squadron keyword, and that's pretty much almost every vehicle in his list. Can auto advance 6 and can move through engagement ranges of the enemy but not end up within combat. That auto 6 is absolutely fantastic. You need to get a specific tank to cut angles, to unlock a potential line of sight. This auto 6, without having to D6 roll, because that's obviously not reliable, seems like a small thing, but is actually pretty big. Let's get to the characters. He has 2 Rogel Dorn commanders, and Rogel Dorn commanders are absolutely fantastic. Rogel Dorns in general, gorgeous models, absolutely beasts of machines. They move 10 inches, T12, 2+ save, 18 wound models with a 5 OC. Basically, he can plant his tread on pretty much any objective and say, this one's mine. They can issue orders within 12 inches, which is really quite spectacular. Reroll 1 hit wound damage roll. And then also it can issue 2 orders in a given phase, which is absolutely fantastic. Both tanks are equipped with oppressor cannons. These are 72-inch. For those of you who don't know inches, that's 6 feet. 6 feet, D6 plus 3 damage, hitting on 4s at strength 12, -2 AP. Sorry, I'm an idiot. D6 plus 3 shots. I apologize. D6 plus 3 shots, hitting on 4s, strength 12, -2, 3 flat damage. And also has blast. So a fantastic gun against infantry, because when you're firing D6 plus 3 shots, you're talking a minimum of 4 shots, +1 for every 5 models in a unit. At that kind of damage, it threatens everything. Puts termies on basically invulns, and then whatever squirrels through a termie dies, which is absolutely fantastic. One of them has the enhancement of calm under fire and can issue the same order. Typically in any phase, you're only allowed to issue 1 order of that type one time. So what does that mean? Well, for instance, he can give +1 take aim twice to 2 different tanks, increasing their ballistic skill by 1. That's really significant. Again, looking at the strats, picking 3 of them. The one that I thought was really quite good is the 2CP one, no kidding. Ablative plating, and that's -1 damage. That is huge when you're talking potentially the new meta, and the new meta being giant robots coming at your face, just unloading with salvos. -1 damage, absolutely spectacular. The other one I really like is Tactical Withdrawal for 1 CP, and that is a fallback and shoot. Everyone understands what they're facing, or at least the upper tables will. And at this event, every table is an upper table. They'll be trying to close in, tag vehicles, dropping those -1s to hit. But these guys will be able to, for 1 CP, get the heck out of dodge and still be able to shoot without penalty. Another one I really like with this style of list, with this many vehicles, and that's going to be true of all these type of lists, is Crash Through. And that's for 1 CP, you can move through terrain. Obviously extremely significant when you're talking positioning, instead of having to go around terrain, to be able to just move through it and then shoot is absolutely spectacular. Being able to Kool-Aid man through a wall and then all of a sudden get a line that your opponent wasn't quite expecting is a massive effect. In his battle line slot, he has Cadian shock troopers. There to sticky a thing and probably guard his back objective if he needs to. And then he's got 2 units, and I like this, 2 pocket-sized units of Attilan Rough Riders, there to just mix it up against the opponent that thought he wasn't going to have any type of answer up close. These guys hit pretty hard, and they move fairly quick. 12-inch move. The Melta-Tip Lance is quite nasty. They only 1 attack apiece, hitting on 3s. I have no idea why this unit hits on 3s, as well as a Space Marine. Yes, that's right. These Attilan Rough Riders apparently have a heck of a training program. Hitting on 3s, strength 9, AP of -4, D6 damage, and lance. Yeah. So, decent. Very decent. And then we're going to follow it up with Hellhounds. I freaking love Hellhounds, and flamethrowers are this size just in general because they make phenomenal Overwatch targets. Anyone dropping, in this case with the Hellhounds, within 18 has a potential of being hit by 2d6, strength 6, AP 2 shots. Only 1 damage, sure, but they're going to be automatically hit, and of course ignore cover. Then we get into the meat and potatoes. We got 2 Leman Russ Exterminators there to basically give +1 AP to the other tanks in his list. So how does that work? The Exterminator hits a target, and once it's hit, anyone else who fires at that target gets +1 AP. And then we have three Leman Russ Vanquisher tanks. If the 2 Rogaldorns weren't enough, whatever armor you put in front of it, he's absolutely gonna try to obliterate it. These Vanquisher cannons are 72-inch, single shots, only hit on 4s, but wait, right? Remember, the Rogaldorn can give, one of them can give the same order twice, increase that to have 2 Vanquisher shots hitting on 3s. At strength 18, -4, D6 plus 6 damage. D6 plus 6 damage. It is heavy, so it can actually boost itself if it doesn't move. An absolutely gross tank killer, unlocking rerolls to wound because it is a tank killer. He's also got another unit of rattlings there to complete whatever screen, do battle tactics, zone out. Love the models as well. I don't know if you've ever seen rattlings, but they're literally half the size of the humans. And those models are just so full of personality. Absolutely love that unit. And then he's got 3 Scout Sentinels in his list. And Scout Sentinels, guess what? Do what? Well, they scout 9 to be exact. 9 is a huge scouting range. They can start of shooting, they can get, they can spot targets, and Army gets reroll 1s versus those targets. All they have to do is have a visible angle on those targets to give that buff to the rest of the Army. And of course, the wonderful thing about Scout Sentinels is, or all vehicles in general in the Imperial Forces, is 100 killer missiles, because they all carry them. So on top of everything else, armor is just going to absolutely be obliterated against this list. So when you're talking anti-tank at a distance, this list has it in spades. When you're talking absolutely obliterating infantry at a distance, it's got that as well, believe it or not, between the two, well, not believe it or not, between the 2 Hellhounds and in general, the Rogel Dorns, which spit out an enormous amount of shots. And even the Scout Sentinels and some of the rattling shots, he's got plenty of options to eliminate infantry at a distance. Up close, all right, he also has 2 out of the 3 where I would be more comfortable at. Artillery Rough Riders can definitely do some work. Nothing that's going to hit his lines is going to hit his lines at full strength, and those Artillery Rough Riders could potentially sortie out and smash face. I love that. Love this list. Great player. Looking forward to seeing what Nick does with that, although I've seen it before, but I think that's a bit of a tweak. All right, let's go to the 3rd highest seeded player. Let's talk about Genestealer Cult. Why does Genestealer Cult have to be so gosh darn complicated? Oh my God, this army. Reading all the rules and trying to figure out the lines of play, I'm not gonna lie to you, was a little bit difficult. I'm not saying I figured it out. What I'm saying is there's a lot in here to digest. And the gentleman who's actually piloting it, Gabriel, has been pretty much piloting Genestealer Cult, one army for the last, I'm gonna say conservatively, at least 2 years. What I love, actually really dig about the 40K community in general, is a lot of guys have what is referred to as faction loyalty or faction specialization. And what a tremendous compliment to the game that regardless of where the army is at, that players with enough skill and experience can still achieve some success or enough success that they feel they don't need to change factions. So at the best of times or worst of times, a lot of these faction specialists just stick with the army because guess what? The game is still so close between degrees of separation between the top and the bottom that they feel they still got game. And that is super, super cool. Great achievement of the 40K design team. So kudos to those guys. All right, so let's get into Genestealer Cult. Well, first off, they have a special army rule called Cult Ambush. At this level of game, 2,000 points, they get 10 resurgence points. Now, what does the resurgence points mean? Basically, they can cash in these points, generally two, to bring back units that have been previously destroyed in the game. This allows for an incredibly grindy style of play and a very, how would you say, objective-based, scenario-based or secondary-based scoring. They're not there. The army isn't so much about crushing face, although it can be very deadly. It is about racking up the score, and that's how they primarily win. So an interesting approach. Love the whole Genestealer Cult like background and narrative. The idea of a body snatchers army is just such a cool and compelling thing. He's taken the detachment host of Ascension, and what the heck does that mean? Well, when a Genestealer cult unit is set up as a reinforcement until the end of that player's turn, next fight phase, weapons have sustained 1 and ignore cover. Because of the aforementioned cult ambush, a lot of units will recycle. He'll be able to place a cult ambush marker on the table. If I'm not mistaken, he'll be able to bring that unit there, wholly within 6 of it, I think. And as long as there's no enemy within 9, the marker stays. So the psychological game you can play is when you kill a unit, you could drop a marker and then say, yeah, you can get rid of the marker, but you have to send a unit there to get within 9 inches of it. If you don't, I'll be able to summon a unit there. But if you do, I'll just be able to summon it anyway from the edges of the board. Maybe not the ideal position, but I can still bring back my stuff. So now the opponent's like, well, do I go for the marker? Does it matter? With just the marker, psychologically, you can sap the player's movement and put him in awkward spots he didn't want to be. And that is such an interesting way of playing the game. Doing mind games with your army is just chef's kiss. I absolutely love that kind of style of play, as you can tell. Before we dive into the army of heroes that are in this list, I want to go over the 3 strats that I really, really liked for Genestealer Cult. For 2 CP, coordinated strike, pick 2 units that have not shot or fought, and they get +1 to wound. +1 to wound, absolutely phenomenal, especially when you're talking demo charges and what have you. Often you're wounding on 2s because of that, but it is not free at 2 CP, but we'll talk about how you can mitigate that a little bit later. The other one I really liked was Return from the Shadows. When a Genestealer Cult unit is targeted, after resolving those shots, he could just remove that unit from the board and put it in attack reserve. I thought this was really, really cool. It means opponents wanting to soften the target before assaulting it, they just cannot risk that. And it also means that units can't necessarily just be obliterated from being hit by multiple enemy units. So if you're going to hit a unit, you got to make it count is basically it. It's 1 CP to do that. And then tunnel crawlers, when you come back onto the board, you can drop just outside of 6 instead of just outside of 9. But when you do so, you cannot charge. Of course, doesn't mean you can't shoot though, so you can clear out objectives, and it makes it much more difficult for your opponent to zone out because of the fact you could drop just outside of 6. Absolutely phenomenal. Okay, let's get to the amount of heroes. All right, so Gabriel took 2 Benefactus. Benefactus are the model with the giant brain thing that goes from the back of the skull right down its back. Benefactus give, to any unit that they join, they give lethal hits. Which is the main reason why he's taking it. And lethals is basically crit auto wound, is basically what it boils down to. One of them has Assassination Edict. Target characters get +1 to hit, which is actually pretty cool. And then he took a Biophagus, which is melee weapons have lethal hits. Again, you're sensing a theme. Lethal hits is definitely auto wound, a really cool thing. But this Biophagus has Alchemist Familiar, which is +1 to wound versus infantry. I think he just pops it once per game. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And then he took a Locust. And the Locust is the guy that's doing this with a big giant like executioner's blade. He gives fight first to the unit he joins, and fight first is obviously very good. He also is a bodyguard to characters while in that unit. So if he's like a guy that can join, and another hero can join as well. That other hero can get a 5-up feel no pain. Oh, sorry, 4-up feel no pain. I apologize. Then there's a Nexus. A Nexus is the guy with the table, I believe, with a holographic projection of the city. He discounts a strat by 1 CP. So let's go back to that coordinated strike. He can now pick 2 units that have not shot or fought and give them +1 to wound for 1 CP instead of 2, which is absolutely fantastic. He can move cult ambush markers. So once an ambush marker has been placed, he can kind of shift it around the board. And then he can reactive move as well, D6. So the unit that he's plugged into, if an enemy ends within 9, that's usually the case, usually it's 9, himself, that unit could just move D6 inches away, closer, into cover, what have you. Reactive moves, incredibly powerful, especially in the game where line of sight matters. Also in his list is a Primus, and this Primus gives a reroll to hit to the unit he joins, and can redeploy up to 3 units at the beginning of the game. So you set up, everyone goes. I believe you'd roll to see who gets to go first, and then he has an opportunity to redeploy 3 units on his board. Absolutely fantastic and incredible. Another layer of mind games that the G-Stealer player can play. We're not done though yet. All right, now we look at Reductus Saboteurs. If you don't know what these are, usually most G-Stealer players take 3 of them, and guess what? Gabriel took 3 of them. They infiltrate, they have lone op, and they are stealth. They can perform the grenade strat for free or offer that to the unit they're attached to. They can also have a reactive move when enemies move, well, not a reactive move, I should say, a reactive action to an opponent's move. So when an opponent moves within 9, they then roll a 2+, and that unit triggered booby traps and eats D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. It makes Reductus Saboteurs one of the most amazing units in their arsenal of heroes. All right, so that's all the heroes. Assassination, generally speaking, probably will not be an issue. There are 9 heroes in this list. Then we get into the meat and potatoes, which are the battle line units, to which he has an absolute buttload. He's got a min unit of Acolyte hybrids with auto pistols. Then he has 2 big units, 10-mans, of Acolytes with one with auto pistols, one with hand flamers. Then he took 1, 2, 3, 4 units with Acolytes with hand flamers, 4 units of 5. Then he has 3 units of 20 neophyte hybrids in his list. All of these bodies that I just finished discussing can be recycled. The Acolyte hybrids for, what are they called again? Resurgent points. I was going to say reinforcement points. Resurgent points, the Acolyte, the 5-mans could be recycled for only 2 points. The big units of 10 would need 10 points a piece. So he's probably, they probably will not be doing that. He'll probably be aiming to typically recycle 5 units, generally speaking. But the 20-mans of neophyte hybrids, he can bring back for 6. That would allow him to bring back a 20-man and 2 units of 5 Acolytes. And that's an interesting combination of units. He obviously can bring back, so instead of, that would only be 3 units, but he could also just bring back 5 units as well. So very, very interesting. The big soul of all these lists are demo charges. Demo charges, generally speaking, are almost on all these lists. Also the hand flamers that are all on this list. The reason why they're taken, I'll explain that in a second. Auto hit, that's basically it. No AP, but the army has figured out a way to work around that. So you're talking about a lot of auto hits. You're talking about a lot of high strength attacks from demo charges, which are D6 attacks They only hit on 5s, but are strength 9, AP 2 damage, D6 attacks. All right, let's talk about his other data sheets, and I'll explain that rest in a second. He has a unit of 5 pure strain Gene Stealers just there to kind of skulk around, potentially mix it up if he needs to. The heart and soul, I wouldn't say the heart and soul, but the engine, because the heart and soul we just talked about, but the engine of how he makes this army work are the Achilles Ridge Runners. So Ridge Runners have Spotter, which gives them a ballistic skill of 3+, but more importantly, they have what is referred to as Crossfire. Now, Crossfire is when an enemy is hit, Gene Stealer cult units that then fire at that unit gain an extra AP. Okay, that's actually where the magic now happens. So all these guys with flamers now have an AP 1, and because they're flamers, they get to ignore cover. It's actually that mass amount of fire, literal fire, is what causes such huge amounts of damage to his opposing forces. So on paper, it looks like it doesn't really do much, but these nickels and dimes turn into dollar bills, and they just start rolling up and just smashing you across the jaw like a big rolled up newspaper. These units are the things that I would try to target to eliminate off them. None of these recur, and I think are absolutely priority targets number 1. While these things are active, all that infantry that we just finished talking about, it just polishes them and brings them up to a whole other new level. So an absolutely fantastic army, an incredibly hard army to pilot, requiring an enormous amount of knowledge of the army itself and an incredible knowledge of the game to really leverage it super well. Like I said, Gabriel's been playing this for at least 2 years, if not longer. It's been so long since Gabriel. He came to one of my events as a new player, relatively new player, and he's come along so much in the last few years. Anyway, what I'm saying is Gabe obviously has an enormous amount of experience and skill. So again, phenomenal list, great guy. Should be very interesting to see what he does with it. Speaking of great guy, we have Mr. Diogo Pita. Diogo, a man I've known since he was a kid, working in one of the shops I used to manage way back when. Diogo is, I think, what I would consider a bit of a meta chaser. The man can't stick to one army at all. He just loves playing 40K, loves playing competitive matches, and honestly, his probably biggest strength, because he hops around so much, is his general knowledge of armies and skill at piloting almost anything, mostly because of the fact he's just a rabid fan and puts in so many reps when he can. So, great guy, great player. So let's look at what he's piloting this time around. He has gone Death Guard. Death Guard, I don't know whether you heard, but Death Guard are pretty darn good in the meta right now. Some would say one of the best armies. So Diogo has said, hey, you know what? I like best armies. So let's talk about the army rule for Death Guard. First off, they have what is referred to as the Contagion aura. First round, it's 3 inches. Second round, 6. 9 is where it tops off on the third round. Within that aura, enemies have -1 toughness and are considered afflicted. It is a keyword that's handed out, which is important because it triggers other abilities, and we'll get to that in a few seconds. As a Death Guard player, Diogo will also have the opportunity to do what I refer to as an audible, but basically the ability to adapt to whoever he's fighting. And what does that mean? He basically gets to layer another contagion on top of what he already has. And the choices are usually extra AP or a decrease in his opponent's weapon skill. Basically, they become a lot worse when they are close to him. There is a third option. I honestly can't remember what that is. It affects OC or something like that, possibly leadership. I never take it. Almost never anyway. Extra AP is usually the go-to choice, but at times, corner case, extra decrease in weapon skill, ballistic skill is -1 to hit basically, is a huge deal. Some armies, especially ones that have a ton of invuln basically. All right, well, let's get to the rest of his list. His detachment. He's taken Mortarian's Hammer. It's one of my faves as well, and it's at start of the battle round. If the enemy are more than 12 inches away from your army, and that's every model, the Death Guard player can pick 2 units in the opposing forces to be afflicted, to get that keyword. That is a big, big deal, and combos really, really well with the choices that he picked. And again, we'll get to that in a few seconds. Before we get into the actual characters, let me talk about my 3 favorite strats. The ones that stood out for me anyway. And I'm not saying that there aren't other strats that aren't as useful or useful. It's just these 3 strats. One, I don't have to discuss all the strats, but 2, these 3 strats stood out to me. For 1 CP, we have Stinking Mire, which is -1 to the opponent's charge. That is, I think, absolutely fantastic. It means units that deep strike in, that want to do a 9-inch charge, all of a sudden need to do an 11-inch charge. Absolutely amazing, especially in a high armor list where you kind of want to keep your opponent away from you. Then we have Relentless Grind for 1 CP, move through terrain. Obviously, when you're moving vehicles around a table, terrain is going to get in the way, and any shape, way, or form that you can mitigate that somehow is a huge, huge deal, at least in my opinion. And then for 2 CP, we have Blighted Land, which is another way for you to dole out the afflicted keyword. It says pick a visible terrain piece within 24 inches. Enemy units within 3 inches are considered afflicted. So when the army starts closing in on you, and it's much harder to give that 2 afflicted units at the beginning because they're now within 12 of your army, you can now have the option for 2 CP to pick a terrain and still splash the afflicted keyword around. Of course, between that and your own auras, you might not ever need to spit out the 2 CP, but it gives you another option to do that. And why is afflicted important? Okay, let's dive into the list. We have the Lord of Virulence. First off, he's taken 2 characters. Lord of Virulence. He has a really cool ability, and he acts like basically a spotter for all the artillery or tanks in the army. It's called Blight Bombardment. 1 enemy visible within 30 inches. Death Guard or range attacks that target get re-roll hit rolls of 1. If it's a blast weapon that's being shot, it just gets straight up re-roll to hit. This is a huge, huge deal, and we'll get to that part, why it's a big deal in a second, especially when we start talking about some of his tanks. His other option for heroes is he took Mortarian. Now, Mortarian is a very, very interesting Primarch. He slaps a little bit better than he did before, but his primary role is still in Death Guard, very, very techy. He's got some really incredible rules. But first off, let's talk about him as a whole. He's got a 2+ save, he's got a 4-up invuln, and a 5-up feel no pain. He's an absolute monster, super tough, T12. He's just a beast. But the reason why you take him is his 3 abilities that he can use once in that turn. Host of Plagues, which a 3+, if you're around him, on a 3+, you suffer D3 mortal wounds. If that unit is afflicted, all right, it gets +1 to that die roll. So instead of happening on a 3+, it happens on a 2+. So his mere presence as you close in can just dole out mortal wounds. And again, in 40K, mortal wounds, the only thing stopping that is feel no pains. Then we go into Diseased Influence. This is a reactive move with friendly units that are around him within 6. they have the option of then moving 5 inches. So you can chain out things so that you get clipped by that 6-inch aura and move out, stretch out, shoot at a thing, and then when someone gets close to you to assault, you can then fade back 5 inches. That is a huge, huge deal. Love reactive movements. And this is as an aura is so good. Then we have Boon of Death within 6 inches again. A 2+ fight on death. Unlike most fights on death, this, I wouldn't say automatic, but practically 2+ is just fantastic. Almost guaranteed that when you hit his lines, his Death Shroud, his Plague Marines will still be able to throw some fists on the way out on 2+, which is just almost quasi-strike first, almost. Then we got Inflamed Reprisal. This is Death Guard units within 6. Targeted can be shot back. What does that mean? It means if you target a unit within 6 inches of him, he could pick another unit to fire back at that enemy that just shot. It's only going to be that enemy. Of course, he could pick himself as the thing that shoots, and he himself isn't too bad because both his Lantern, which is his big giant plasma gun, and his Psychic Power Rotwind have a 24-inch range. Very decent guns. And it's nice to just be able to just do this. This doesn't cost anything. It's just his mere presence. So if you know you're going to get shot, you can just fire some shots back. Doesn't cost any CP. So good. I love Mortarion. Sweet, sweet looking model. Love Death Guard in general. Have a rather large unpainted collection myself. Really got to get it done. In his other data sheets, he has 2 pocket-sized units of Death Shroud. Let's look back at that afflicted keyword. Death Shroud have Deep Strike, so the Deep Strike just outside of 9 like everyone else does. But when afflicted, they get Deep Strike outside of 6. And that's where now all these afflicted keywords that we were discussing really truly matter. And Death Shroud, even just 3 of them, will absolutely smash the crap out of most units in the game. Now we start getting into fetid bloat drones. We'll start off with the Plague Spitter. What I love about the Plague Spitter, and almost certainly how Diogo is going to be using it, it's just a lonesome Plague Spitter drone. He'll either be moving up the lines or positioned behind buildings and positioned to cover for Overwatch. Deep strikes, whack some infiltrators, because these are basically flamethrowers. What's also really great about the actual drone, especially this little 90-point little demon engine, is he can have it whirring around the board to drop auras of contagion. So in ladder turns, round 3 forward, the auras around every single Death Guard unit is actually auras of 9 inches. Around that base of his base, that 9 inches can go quite far. And I gotta say, I've used my drones for that. I can't see why he wouldn't. And again, the big advantage of Plague Spitter specifically is to Overwatch. Now we get into the fetid bloat drones that are quite significant. And these are the drones with the heavy blight launchers. If you've played against any Death Guard players at this point, you'll have seen at least 3 of these in every list, and for very good reason. These are 36-inch range, D6 plus 2 shots, hitting on 3s, strength 10, AP2, flat 3 damage, blast, and lethal hits. The gun could basically do everything, and at 100 points, absolutely phenomenal. And they're on a decently fast chassis. Fetid bloat drones, if I'm not mistaken, move 8 inches. Just so good. so good. At strength 10 too. If they were strength 9, I think I would be like, okay, these are still pretty good. Strength 10, that is such a nice break. I gotta tell you. Again, if you send that other drone close by, reducing toughness, you could get tanks to, or some vehicles to winning on 3s. Just fantastic. All right, so then we go into the other ones. The other drones that kind of crawl across the field, and that's Myfetic Blight Haulers. These are little 90-point little demon engines of fun. They got tank hunters, so against monsters and vehicles, they get a +1 to hit and to wound. They have a melta, a multi-melta, and a rocket launcher. Look absolutely sweet. And running around as units of 1 means you can basically sometimes overcommit waste shots to get rid of it, because it's not necessarily easy to get rid of. All these demonic engines, by the way, have a 5-up invuln. And if you start rolling hot, if you start dividing fire, you might not kill these. And they operate at full until dead. So whether they have 9 wounds or 1 wound, it doesn't matter. It's not going to affect their performance. I love my Myfetic Blight Haulers. They look really, really cool as well. Now we go into the Plague Burst Crawlers. Diogo's opted to take 2 of these. And the big deal with these, and pretty much this is the only detachment I would really entertain the thought of taking Plague Burst Crawlers, is in Mortarian's Hammer. Why? They have an additional rule called Spore Laced. And they send shockwaves of spores across the opponent's forces. When you select a target, roll a d6 for the target and every unit within 3 inches of it. On a 6+, 5+, if those units are afflicted, after resolving the attack of the weapon that shot, that mortar, each unit struck by the spores suffers D3 mortal wounds. This is absolutely fantastic. It doesn't sound like it would go off all that often, but think of every single game you've ever played of 40K, especially at the beginning, round 1. Everyone's trying to jockey for that cover, and everyone piles in and tries to maintain basically circles of influence and buffs. A lot of things squeeze into spots. To be able to fire a weapon indirectly at 48 inches, I believe it's 48 inches. It might be 3 feet. Okay, you know what? I don't want to waste time, but I gotta now check. Plague Burst Crawlers are 48 or 3 feet? I'm thinking it's 4 feet. Oh, did the wrong thing. Of course I screwed up. Plague Burst, come on. Oh, bingo. Ranged. Yeah, 4 feet. I was remembering right. It just sounded so good. All right, to fire indirectly at 4 feet and then be able to just shockwave a bunch of mortal wounds onto a unit is just so good. Let's look at any of those other previous armies we discussed, like Genestealer Cult. They have a tendency to just pile on in and around all their characters, within vehicles and what have you. Vehicles at least would provide a defense to this. But even having multiple vehicles piled under one spot and to be able to actually just dish out mortal wounds as a side thing is just so good. Love the Plague Burst Crawlers in this list. I would have been sorely tempted to take 3, but they are not free. At 195 points each, you are paying quite the premium for these. And it is unfortunate that they cost so much. I really don't think they're worth that, other than in this one specific detachment. And even then, at 195, I would really like to see like a 10 or 15 point discount. Of course, as a Death Guard player myself, of course I'm going to say that. I'm sure no one around the world is going to want to toss a bone for Death Guard right now. So you're right. I'm happy to take them at 195. All right. Also in his list is 3 units of Poxwalkers, and these units have Infiltrate. They're the jam. screen out his army from alpha strikes, zone out deep strikes, potentially trail off or trail back to Mortarion to get redeployed or reactive movement. Great list. Love the choices. What is interesting is no Lord of Contagion. I like it. He went the Mortarion route instead and went for more tech. I dig it. Oh, sorry. Let's go through the lens again. Does he have things that kill tanks at a distance? Technically, yes. In the form of the bloat drones with blight launchers. I say technically because that's strength 10. Strength 10, you're riding the line between whether or not you can actually break that armor. The Plague Burst Crawlers also have entropy cannons. He recognized the fact that he needed more anti-tank in his forces, and he did do that. So he's got both Plague Burst Crawlers, all the Fetid Blight Drones, potentially Mortarion as well. So I think he's covered killing tanks at a distance at a fairly decent level. Crushing infantry at a distance. Well, all those Fetid Bloat Drones with Blight Launchers all have blast, so those are really, really quite good. The Plague Burst Crawlers also have blast. Oh my goodness. Go back to anti-tank. I completely forgot about the Myphetic Blight Haulers. He has multi-meltas there as well. And multi-meltas are pretty darn good, especially if they get up close. Going back to anti-infantry, the Myphetic Blight Haulers also have rocket launchers with frag, so those are pretty good. So again, he's got a real answer for infantry at a distance as well. And then twisting heads up close. 2 pocket-sized units of Death Shroud, definitely do that. Mortarion himself can smash most things in combat anyway. And anything serious, I'm assuming Diogo is going to be aiming to wither it down with ranged attacks. So love the list. No bias there at all whatsoever. My man, I hope you have the best time at the actual tournament. Let's go to Ilko. Ilko is, what is it now? Ilko, what seed are you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th seed. Now, Ilko just got back into 40K last year, I think, if I'm not mistaken. He was a man that I recognized as a young guy we met a long time ago. Love Ilko, love the way he thinks. He's a very non-emotive person, but genuinely a great, great guy. Love Ilko, and he loves Space Marines. Again, Oath of the Moment is a big, big deal in the list. Because why? Of course, he's just taking them as Space Marines, basically Ultramarines, but no actual Ultramarine characters, so he couldn't call it Ultramarines per se. But he will get the reroll to hit and the +1 to wound is what I'm saying. He's taking Gladius Task Force, and the Gladius Task Force has a really cool army rule in the form of doctrines. These are once per game abilities. Start of the command phase, he picks one of these 3 things, and again, once he uses it, he cannot use it again. Of course, there's rules to break that, but let's first talk about it. He could set his army into Devastator Doctrine, which means he can now advance and shoot, which is pretty amazing. Tactical Doctrine, which is fallback, shoot, charge, which is absolutely bonkers. And then Assault Doctrine, which is advance and charge, another phenomenal, phenomenal doctrine. Love Gladius Task Force, fantastic group or army rules, and it just doesn't stop there. Let's talk about their strats. Honestly, I had a hard time picking 3 strats that I really, really liked, but I did anyway. But I'm going to tell you right now, almost all their strats are super, super good. For 1 CP, he has Squad Tactics, and that's a reactive move. So basically, unit moves within 9, he D6 moves a unit away in any direction he wishes. Absolutely fantastic. He uses it to cap objectives, he can use it to get behind cover, avoid getting shot, and what have you. For 1 CP, he has Adaptive Strategy, and that's select a doctrine to be active, even one that's been used prior. So basically, for 1 CP, he can always have a doctrine he needs at one spot on the table when he needs it. fantastic strat. And then he's got a 2 CP strat. Only in death does duty end, and that is fight and death. The most significant part about this 2 CP strat is it does not require a die roll. It just happens. It's not on a 2+, it's not on a 3+, it's not on a 4+. It just always. That's right. I spent 2 CP on this. They always get up and punch you back in the face. I really like this strat. Obviously, not free for 2 CP, but a fantastic strat when you need it. All right, so in his character, and the only character in his army, is a librarian. The librarian will join a unit, probably a Stern Guard, I would think, but we'll see. He gives that unit a 4-up Feel No Pain versus psychic attacks, and then a 4-up Invuln to the unit because he puts up a mind shield on the unit, which is absolutely fantastic. It has an enhancement called Honor Vehement, and that means unit gets +1 attack, +1 strength. On the Assault Doctrine, that unit gets +2 attacks, +2 strength. So really quite good, especially when you do that adaptive strategy. If you've already used Assault, you'll always be able to really leverage that. What I also love about Ilko's list is he typically uses drop pods. It's not something that a lot of players use in 40K, but basically drop pods offer you the ability to deep strike turn 1. And this can catch a lot of people flat-footed because even after you inform them that they can drop deep strike turn 1, they easily forget because they're so used to not having to worry about that. And then all of a sudden, on their own turn, they just have these drop pods just crash into their lines. And all of a sudden, these lines of shooting that they thought his opponent didn't have just come into play. Drop pods, I think, are absolutely fantastic. A really neat thing. He spent 140 points for 2 of them to have that option. In his list, he has 3 gladiators. 2 of them are lancers, and these are the basically tank busting ones with their strength 14 or so, lasers. And then he took a gladiator reaper, which is anti-infantry, just shoots out a curtain of fire. He then took 3 Inceptor squads, and these are the Primaris with the jump packs that can just deep strike with plasmas. Fantastic thing at eliminating armor and key units. Use them as a surgical strike. Love the fact there are only 3 models, so it's a little bit easier to kind of fit into those spaces as well. He took an Infernus squad, again, mostly to Overwatch and potentially guard his home base. Again, I'm just guessing here, but probably. He also took 2 Predator Annihilators, again, there for anti-tank, and a Predator Destructor. And then his main infantry hammer is his big unit of Stern Guard veterans. With Oath, they get reroll to wound. Okay, so Oath for this Space Marine army gives reroll to hits and +1 to wound. With reroll to wound, it means wounding is definitive, but what makes it really crazy is when it combines with the weapons from the squad, because the weapons all have dev wounds, assault, they have heavy and rapid fire. So dev wounds with +1 to wound and rerolls, you can just, if you don't trigger those 6s, you can just fish for more dev wounds. Just an absolutely great combination of rules, making the Stern Guard vets an incredibly nasty unit to potentially drop pod. Or just have walk up the field, to be honest, and maybe bank behind or position or stage behind an actual building, ready to mix it up later. Also in his army, he took a Storm Speeder Thunderstrike, and this thing is basically when a monster vehicle is hit by it, the army gets +1 to wound on that target. Again, another way to get almost like a pseudo oath in the list itself. he opted not to take reboot. So this is a way, without having to spend points on reboot, to be able to almost oath 2 targets with at least +1 to wound, if not the rerolls. Very interesting army, lots of armor. Does he have 3 anti-tank? Yes, he has that in spades. What's interesting is no Vindicator tanks. He went with Lancers and Annihilators instead. So plenty of anti-tank in the list. How good is he at waxing infantry? Well, between the Gladiator Reaper, the Inceptor squads, the Destructor, and of course Stern Guard, that's not a problem either. How well does he do with twisting off heads? And that's where his list is showing some weakness. Again, you have to get there to do that, but an incredibly aggressive, fast-moving army will contact his lines and really not feel threatened by much of anything. Now, don't get me wrong. So sorry, folks. Don't get me wrong. The actual veterans themselves can mix it up in combat. But typically, that's not going to be their main purpose. They'll be leveraging absolutely every single resource to try and stay out of combat, right? Can they do it in a pinch? Yes. Sorry. Lots of talking. Can they do that in a pinch? Sure. But it's not ideal. And the one glaring weakness in his army is definitely the melee. So if things deep strike and then make those 9-inch charges, none of that is really going to be feeling the threat in melee. But like I said, you have to get there. And Ilko, very good player. He will zone you out very well, and he has the tools to do so. Also, very cool looking army. It's painted absolutely stunningly. All right. Now we go into Mr. Sebastian Marengo. Sebastian has been a veteran of competitive play here in the area for a mighty, mighty long time. He's been one of the top Necron players in the world for various stages in his gaming portfolio, resume, if you will. Fantastic dude, and love him to death. And you know what? Love what he plays as well. Also on top of that, a beautifully painted army that if it's not dropped on the ground, looks absolutely glorious. Much love to you, buddy. All right, let's talk about his Necrons. First off, thing about Necrons is they have what is referred to as reanimation protocol. So basically, this is a way for them to get back infantry or just straight up heal D3. This is nuts. This is so, so good. Heal is an absolutely incredible mechanic, especially when married up with really tough chassis. And that is what my man has done. He's taken Shatterstar Arsenal, and the name of his list is called Cheek Shatter. And Shatterstar Arsenal is enemies targeted on objectives. Necron units get +1 to hit. Necron vehicles or mounted units have assault. So good. You could have a tank whipping around a building and just getting a bonus to hit is just absolutely fantastic. I kind of wish the tanks. I'm not a fan of the look of the Doomsday Arcs, but my goodness, our Doomsday Arcs really, really good in this list. Guess what? He might have 1, 2, maybe 3 of them in the list. But before we get into that, I want to talk about my 3 favorite stratagems. And again, there'll be others that are good. These are just my 3 favorite. For 1 CP, Dimensional Tunnel, which is, of course, move through terrain. Are you seeing a pattern? Yes, folks. If you are taking a very vehicle-centric army, I am going to automatically love anything that allows you to move through terrain. It's an incredibly powerful CP and one that every single one of those armies will use, hence why it is my favorite. Also for 1 CP is Endless Servitude. the ability to just basically trigger protocols. Protocols typically trigger, I believe, in the command phase, and you can then trigger during various other stages of the game. This can save your bacon and prevent a model from dying. An absolutely clutch strat, and I dig it. Did I also tell you that Necrons are just beautiful? If I haven't, they are. 1 CP. He can also a reactive reposition. After being shot and that shot's been resolved, that unit can move D6 inches. Of course, that's going to be good because that could pull you out of charge ranges. It could put you back into cover, which is also absolutely fantastic. So with those 3 CPs or strats in mind and all those army rules, let's dive into the actual list itself. In the character slot, we have Satan Shard, Nightbringer, because why wouldn't you? These things, Satans in general, all share more or less the same strats. I don't think any of them are different. They all move 6 inches. They're all T11. They have 4+ saves, 12 wounds, a 4-up invuln, and a 5-up feel no pain. Oh, fan-freaking-tastic. Very easy to get cover in current edition of 40K. So that 4-up save can actually be quite easily a 3-up save with a 4-up invuln and a 5-up feel no pain. It's just absolute perfection. Nightbringer's spice that he brings to the table is Drain Life. DC, roll a D6 for each enemy within 6 inches. And on a 4+, those enemies suffer D3 mortal wounds. Just by his mere presence, Nightbringer, I guess the incarnation of death, just starts sucking your souls, and you just start dying around him. Oh, did I also tell you that all Satan half damage? So we just went over Nightbringer. Let's look at all those other strats and army abilities that we just finished talking about, and how much better are these beasts or this guy with that in mind. Heal D3 on a chassis that has a 4-up save, a 4-up invuln, and a 5-up feel no pain is absolutely fantastic. Being able to trigger it off phase, just fantastic. All right, so let's look at now the Satan Shard of the Void Dragon. The Shard of the Void Dragon is an absolutely stunning model. I truly, truly wish the design studio had some sort of time, a gap in their production schedule to just redesign Nightbringer. I find Nightbringer far too small for what he is. He really should be the size of the Void Dragon. I know as Necron players, having a small Satan is actually fantastic. But really, I think Nightbringer should be balanced by a much larger model. And not only that, I just want a super sexy model. And I want Nightbringer to be as gorgeous as the Void Dragon. That's basically it. All right, so let's look at the Void Dragon. What does he have? Matter absorption. One enemy vehicle within 12 inches. That enemy vehicle takes D6 hits on a 2+ D3 mortal damage. These are D6 shots at 2+ D3 mortal damage is absolutely nasty. And then, of course, in combat, he's got anti-vehicle, all sorts. Needless to say, all these Satan are absolutely fantastic in combat. And again, half damage. Again, can be healed up. Can activate the protocol as well as a strat. And then can also take advantage of Shatterstar Arsenal, which is +1 to hit. Woo! Okay, so next we have the Hexmark Destroyer. Hexmark Destroyer is the Doc Ock, the guy with all the pistols. Love this little hero. Has lone op, can overwatch for free, and when he does so, can overwatch and shoot at 2+ with all those pistol shots. He can also reactive shoot. So if you target another model within 3 inches of him, he can then blaze away at you with his pistol fire. Love this guy. Sweet looking model as well. And then we have Imhotep. Imhotep is basically mainly there for the free CP per round. He's also a Lord of the Storm. So what does that mean? D6 for each enemy within 12 inches. On a 2 to 5, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. And on a 6, they suffer D3 +3 mortal wounds. So this guy can do shocking amounts of damage if you get really close to him. I do not believe he requires line of sight to do any of these things. So kind of nasty. Also sweet looking model. Then we have the man, the legend that is the Silent King. Yes, the man who doesn't talk has an 8-inch move, a toughness of 10, 2+ save, 16 wounds. I'm sure he has a feel no pain that I just didn't write down, but absolutely amazing. He also passively improves Necron's leadership by 1. He comes with these 2 Mainhirs, is what they're called, like megaliths right beside him that kind of float around on lightning. And not going to say act as his bodyguard, but as a unit, he could distribute damage to them. So in a roundabout way, yeah. These things move 8 inches, T10, 2+ save, 5 wounds apiece, and also have 1 OC. One of the many reasons to take the Silent King, on top of the fact that he just has an incredible amount of firepower in the form of those Mainhirs, and can mix it up a little bit in combat as well, he has what is referred to as tri-arc abilities. Start of round, pick one, okay? These all have a 6-inch range. He could go units within 6 inch, reroll hit rolls of 1 and wound rolls of 1, or Necron units within 6 can reroll charge rolls and gain +1 to strength when they charge in there, or Necron units within 6 ignore modifiers to characteristics. So if you have stealth and say you're -1 to hit, he could just ignore that to everything within 6 inches of him. That is actually pretty darn huge, because I'm pretty sure that counts the Mainhirs as well. It could be him specifically, but I believe it's him and his unit. Even if it was just him specifically, the dude is on a rather large base himself. So he's a really good buff piece. Looks absolutely stunning. Can kick butt at a distance, up close. I love the Silent King. That's basically what it boils right down to it. All right, what's his other data sheets? Sebastian decided to put in death marks. Death marks are just a fantastic little unit, probably there to camp on his home objective. They have heavy and precision, so if they don't move, they get +1 to hit, and could just delete heroes out of units. Enemies set up within 18 inches and visible to these snipers can be shot at, which is pretty cool. And then what's in the rest of his list? 3 Doomsday Arcs. So a bunch of heroes, 1 little tiny unit, and 3 Doomsday Arcs are in his list. The Doomsday Arcs are just incredibly powerful. 6-foot range. They fire D6 +1 shots, 3+ to hit. But again, Shatterstar can increase that to hitting on 2s. 18 strength, AP 4, flat 4 damage. Just to remind you, D6 +1 shots at flat 4 damage, not bad. And if they stay stationary, so do not move, the platform gains dev wounds on top of all of that. Phenomenal. And the last unit he has in his army is a Triarch Stalker. The Triarch Stalker does have a 6-inch scout move, which is really neat. I guess to give him a little bit of space. Triarch Stalkers are actually quite a large base model. So being able to scout ahead 6 inches actually zones very well as well. Enemy hit by its gun do not gain the benefit of cover. So the Triarch Stalker can be used to help the Doomsday Arcs and the Menhirs in the list and the Satan to make sure that unit dies. Super elite list, but incredibly tough. Combined with all the healing that's in the list, this list is just so good. It also looks absolutely fantastic. Fantastic list, fantastic guy. Looking forward to seeing what Sebastian does with that over the Invitational. All right, we're closing in the last 2 lists. Woo! All right, so these are the bottom 2 seeded players. These are the guys that did aight during the the Invitational Series. We got Thomas O'Brien. Now, Tom has been popping over to the shop in the last 2 or 3 years. Discovered the shop a little while ago. Primarily plays out of Toronto, and a fantastic guy who is an absolute faction loyalist, specifically with Harlequins. He absolutely loves his Harlequins, has a beautifully painted army, and has been really wanting Harlequins to be just a little bit better than they are. New book came out, and that's exactly what he got. They got a little bit better than what they were. I was slightly disappointed on what the Harlequins got out of that new book, but I guess the design team didn't really want to give them too much, we'll say that. Well, first off, what's the cool army rule? The cool army rule in this army is battle focus. At this level of match, 2,000 points, the Eldari have 4 battle focus points that they get to use. Now, they get to do all these really super cool abilities that would normally in most other armies cost you a CP to do. They get an additional CP-like strat ability for it not costing any CP. So pretty darn cool. So what can they do? Well, for 1 point, they get +2 to move to 1 unit. Normal move, advanced move, or fall back. They could also, for 1 of these points, give no overwatch to a unit. Super clutch, super useful. They could give D6 +1 move to vehicles. They could do a 6-inch pile or consolidate, which is just so good. When enemy fall back, unit moves D6 +1. What does that mean? It means if the enemy disengage you so they can shoot you, that unit can then, for 1 of these battle focus points, move D6 +1 away. So as you move away from them to shoot them, they can then move D6 +1 and get out of dodge. Super useful battle focus. And then another really cool thing they get to do is shoot and fade D6 +1 inches. So they can move, fire, and then for 1 battle focus point, move D6 +1 behind cover. Absolutely fantastic. All right, now let's talk about their detachment rule, which is Ghosts of the Webway. Now, Ghosts of the Webway is a Harlequin-specific detachment, and basically troops gain battle line and count as OC2, which is actually extremely relevant for scooping up objectives from the enemy on fast-moving transports. So definitely something. They can also charge through enemy, like they're not there. Normally, when you charge, you have to move around enemy. When it comes to the actual Harlequins themselves, they can just leap over units and charge things behind them, which is also pretty darn cool. All right, so let's get to the actual characters. We got the Solitaire, the Assassin Extraordinaire. This little death machine can move 12 inches, always fights first, has lone op, has stealth. Where it turns really nuts is when it chooses to blitz. It gets an additional 2d6 inches to its move. It gains an additional 3 attacks. So that cranks it up to 12 attacks with its Death Kiss. And can, of course, advance and charge. Solitaires, absolutely fantastic. If you don't know what the background of the Harlequins are, basically they are a dance group that perform the story of the fall of their race to both Drukhari and Craft World Eldar through dance and theater. The Eldar that represents or plays the role of Slaanesh is actually the Solitaire. And unfortunately, assuming that role means it actually forfeits its soul. Its soul cannot be guarded in any shape, way, or form. So this tragic character understands that when it dies, it's going to have hell to pay when it gets to the other side. So knowing that, shed a tear every single time a solitaire dies in your local gaming group. All right, then we have the Troop Master. The Troop Master, he's got 2 of them. The Troop Master grants a 6-inch pilot and consolidate. Again, really, really great when it's go time. One of them has, I'm going to say Kegaraches. I am 100% certain I'm mispronouncing that. Kegaraches coil, which also sounds terrible. All right, so let's go. On a 4+, units that charge with him in it do impact mortal wounds of 1 up to a maximum of 6 mortal wounds. So that's the Troop Master. In case you're wondering, in that storyline of dancing and theater, the Troop Master plays the role of the Laughing God. So what 3 strats did I really love in this army? Well, I liked Stage Death, and how could you not? For 1 CP, bring back a character with 3 wounds. Hey, wait a second. Is Solitaire a character? That's right. For 1 CP, you can bring back the Solitaire with 3 wounds. Instead of going to Slanesh to be eaten, no, he denies that fate and comes back to the board. Then for also 1 CP, Mocking Flight, which is fall back, shoot, and then charge, which is pretty fantastic. And then exit the stage, which is end of opponent's turn. Put a unit into reserve. Again, uppy down mechanic for 1 CP. In the battle line slot, we actually have quite a few. We have a Corsair Void Reavers unit, which actually has the ability to scout 7 inches, re-roll hit rolls of 1 against units, I'm assuming on an objective. Units on the objective, they get the full re-rolls with their weapons. I believe 1, if not all of them, have a 4+ invuln as well. Then he has 1, 2, 3, 4 units, or 4 troop units in his actual army. I truly wish these guys were a little bit deadlier than they are. They're mainly there for their OC boost to scoop up objectives. They can't really hang, but they do have a 4+ invuln due to their flip belts and their prismatic showering of optical illusions that they spit out once they start dancing. In his dedicated transport slot, he has 1, 2, 3, 4 units of Star Weavers, and these will be transporting the units of troops around the board. These wonderful 80-point little transports are mainly there to transport and also there for their anti-infantry because they have shuriken cannons. In his other data sheets, he has 2 units of fire dragons because he sure as heck can't say no to fire dragons. These are his anti-tank. They have 12-inch firing, basically melta guns, 1 shot apiece, hitting on 3s at strength 9, neg 4 AP, D6 shots, have assault and melta 3. So if they get within 6, they do D6 plus 3 points of damage. The Exarch in the unit has a fire pike, which is just a longer range melta gun. Then he has 2 units of Rangers, which have stealth and are there to screen, get in the way, infiltrate, and make sure those Alpha Strike armies don't just saunter up to his lines and bog them in. And then he has 3 Sky Weavers. These are the bikes. I know everything's a Weaver. It's hard to understand what all these things are, but he's got 1 big unit of 6 bikes and then 2 small units of 3 bikes. The big unit has Haywire, there for the anti-tank, and the small units have shuriken, I believe, shuriken cannons in the list. And then he has his 2 Void Weavers, and these are basically his main anti-tank. They do have stealth, they do have lone op 18 inches, and then the prismatic cannons hit super, super hard. So what do I think of the list overall? Well, it is incredibly fragile. Does he have multiple sources of anti-tank? Well, anti-tank is not a problem for Thomas's list. Does he have sources of anti-infantry? Again, I think between all the Star Weavers, Shuriken Cannons, and the Skyweaver Shuriken Cannons, that isn't an issue either. And now we get down to the big issue, which is up close and personal. The troops just can't really hang with melee armies, which is truly unfortunate. His one boogeyman, which is a solitaire, is absolutely phenomenal, but that one character can't be everywhere on the battlefield. So typically, a lot of forces love closing in on it. This is an incredibly elite army. We are not talking about a lot of models, but I am not saying anything that Thomas doesn't already know. You got to love the army you love. Thomas, in his defense, I will say this, squeezes every last drop out of this list. And if GW Design Studio tosses any bigger of bone for this kid, he will absolutely dominate. Have I said his army's gorgeous? It is. Love the guy, love the army. I truly hope he does well going into the Invitational. All right, let's look at the last highest seeded player. This is 8th from the top. 8th from the top, we have Mr. Simon Corsia. All right, this big man loves competitive play, has been a fixture in competitive format in the area for as long as, it feels like as long as he's been playing the game. Is part of the War Game Warriors, as is Adel, the highest seeded player, I might add. They got some really, really good players on their team, and Simon definitely, I think, is one of them. Simon is playing Thousand Suns. He's another faction specialist. Will play the army in the good times and the bad. But right now, I think Thousand Suns are in a fantastic spot. Way more diversification in the game and how they play the actual game. So what's their army rule? It's basically, their army rule is casting spells. How does it work? He rolls 2d6, and if he hits the target number, he casts the spell. Now, what's interesting is after he rolls that number, he can then roll a further d6. The problem is, any doubles that he rolls, he can eat d3 mortal wounds to do it. So, as he taps into more mystical might, he fries his brain a little bit. It could actually cost him his life. So, what are the 4 spells? Well, one of them is a 24-inch reroll to hit rolls of 1, and on a 10 plus, reroll all hits. So it's a buffing spell. Another one is a temporal, oh gosh, I can't remember, but basically, again, pick a unit within 24, and that unit can move d6 inches. If cast on a 10 plus, it could just move a flat 6 inches. His other spell, cast on a 7, which is like a Doom Bolt-like spell, if not Doom Bolt itself, does d3 mortal wounds, and on a 10 plus, does d3 plus 3 mortal wounds. And then he has a spell cast on a 9, again, 24-inch range, improve the AP by 1 on the unit. And on a 12 plus, this is the only one that's on a 12 plus, increase the AP by 2. Okay, so some phenomenally powerful psychic spells that these guys have access to, and that is their army rule. No one else gets it. A very cool way to represent the Cabal of Sorcerers. Really, really love Thousand Suns, love the look of the army, and I really like what they did with their army rule. The detachment that he picked is Grand Coven, and that's during the command phase. He can select one of these abilities once per battle, okay? So once they're used, they can't be used again. Imbued Manifestation, which is plus 6-inch range to any psychic weapon. So looking at all those spells, he can make it a 30-inch range, that sort of thing. Psychic Maelstrom, which is plus 1 to wound. That is really big. And then Wrath of the Immaterium, which is give the unit dev wounds. Seems good. The three strats I really loved from this detachment. Again, just my opinion, folks. Don't come at me in any of the chat. But the one I really liked is Destined by Fate, which is changed for 1 CP, change the damage roll to just 0. Super clutch ability, can save a model. I just can't say no to that. Also for 1 CP, Desecration of Worlds. And that's basically after you control an objective, you can just sticky it and allow your unit to just walk away from it. Again, I think incredibly useful in an elite army, and this definitely counts as that. And then for 2 CP, Devastating Sorcery. Love the names of these guys. Plus 9 inches to the range of psychic weapons. Reroll to hit and reroll to wound as well. What a buff. Doesn't come free, but I think well worth the 2 CP at the right key times. Like Genestealer Cult, this army loves its characters, and this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 heroes in this list. All right. Deep Breath is the last list. If you've stuck around up to this point, you're a hero. I would appreciate you hitting some imaginary buttons at the bottom of your screen. Hit subscribe, hit some thumbs up. We'd love to have you back. All right, so Exalted Sorcerer on disc has lone up 18 inches. So basically cannot be targeted unless you're within 18 inches of him. Hits -2 from move. Oh yes, sorry, pardon me. When it hits you with Arcane Fire, it can debuff that enemy unit, deducting 2 from their move and 2 from their charge. These are both Exalted Sorcerers. He's rocking 2 of them in the list. Absolutely fantastic little units, and they look freaking cool. Then we go to Magnus the Red. Magnus the Red, the Sorcerer Supreme, Primarch of Thousand Suns, can cast 2 spells. That I mentioned that before, that the detachment rule of casting spells, the heroes can only attempt to cast it once. If unsuccessfully cast, another wizard could try casting it. But once successfully cast, that spell cannot be cast again. Magnus allows the ability to cast 2 spells, so he can Doombolt and Temporal if he wishes. And when he casts those spells, he gets +2 to his cast, which is absolutely fantastic, as is his due. Like all the Primarchs, he has the ability at the start of round to pick from one of 3 cool abilities. One is -1 from damage, so pick a unit. That unit has -1. I think it might even be within an aura range. One enemy unit within 24 inches gains hazardous. So anytime they attack, they then have to test for hazardous and potentially just die. And then another ability is a Thousand Suns unit within 6 inches of him gains +2 inches to his move. Of course, Magnus can see himself with that and can gain an extra 2 inches to his already fantastic movement. Magnus the Red, just a fantastic model, fantastic Primarch. And then we go into the Sorcerers. He has 2 units of 2 Sorcerer characters, in his list. The Sorcerers, when they attach the list, those units gain lethal hits. And then once per battle, shoot fight at +3 strength and +3 to their attacks. Basically, they just go super silent and just take their giant staves and start smashing face. One of them has the Eldritch Vortex, which is +1 strength and +1 damage to psychic weapons, and of course that can be their mind bullets as well. The other sorcerer has a once per battle in the Thousand Suns player's command phase, can put a unit into strategic reserves, into reinforcements, and can come back in the reinforcement steps. Then he has 2 Zangor Shamans, and these Shamans zipping around, I believe on their discs. I believe they're on discs. Grant, +1 to hit on to the unit that they're in. And then they also have the ability to sack one of the models from their unit to give D3 extra attacks and strength to the Zangor Shaman's attacks, which is absolutely phenomenal. The units that are in, it has an 18-inch range, D6 shots, 3+ to hit attack, strength 9, AP 0, but blast and dev wounds. Be able to give another D3, so D6 plus D3 attacks if it so wishes, at strength 10 plus possibly strength 11. Again, sorry folks, is absolutely phenomenal. All right, Shamans. In his battle line slot, we got 2 units of rubrics. Love rubrics. Excuse me. Love rubrics. Both are equipped with Soul Reaper chain guns. They have dev wounds as well. What's super sweet about the actual Marines themselves, and they have a 3-up save, obviously like they're Marines, but they also have a 5-up invuln, OC of 2, and can reroll wound rolls. They're just a really solid unit, and I don't know if they actually have sticky, but they do definitely have sticky or access to sticky as a strat. He has a dedicated transport, 1 single Chaos Rhino. And then we get to the Cthulhu monsters that are the Mutalith Vortex Beasts. I'm going to say at this point that 3 Mutalith Vortex Beasts are probably almost auto-include. These guys are so good. 10-inch moving, T10, 4+ save, 13 wounds, have an OC of 4, that is relevant for capping objectives, and a 5-up invuln. They have a shot that fires 3 feet, single shot that hits on 3s at 18 strength, neg 3, D6 plus 6 damage. And just in case that wasn't enough, has dev wounds as well. Fantastic little anti-tank gun. But what puts them over the top is wizards around them, so within 6, get an additional +1 to cast. So you can have Magnus sitting at +3 to cast on his 2 spells that he can fling across the board. Just fantastic. These things also have a crazy aura, warping aura around them. Of 6 inches. Every enemy unit, he just rolls on a 2 to 3. I believe it's every enemy unit. It might be pick 1, but I think it's every enemy unit. Rolls a die. On a 2 to 3, that unit suffers a mortal wound. On a 4 to 5, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. And on a 6, suffers D6 mortal wounds. Absolutely fantastic. And then he has 2 units of Zangor Enlightened. With Fatecaster Great Bows, fast moving, absolutely phenomenal units. Their bows fire 30-inch range, 2 shots from each one of them, so that's 6 shots. Hitting on 4s at strength 5, neg 2 AP at 2 flat damage. Guess what? They also ignore cover, have lethal hits, and precision. For 80 points. Fantastic unit. And just in case that wasn't enough, they also have a reactive move. When an enemy moves within 9 inches of them, they just get to move D6 inches away in any direction they wish. Phenomenal unit. Then we have Zangors on foot, and these little goat birds get to move around, screen. I think they have Scout. I can't actually remember now whether they have Scout or Infiltrate. But basically these guys are there to zone out and zone out any deep strikes, screen if for the big guy, just in case he doesn't want to get into combat. Holy cow. Now you understand why we're not reviewing all 16. We reviewed 8, and that is plenty. I've been talking for quite a while. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show. Sorry that I didn't respond to any comments in this stream, but I truly hope you will join us this Saturday for the actual Invitational. We'll be kicking off at roughly about 8:30, between 8 and 8:30. It should be a heck of a battle. I know all these guys, and every single one of them is a fantastic human being. I am super looking forward to hosting the event. Other than that, folks, I am going to bid you all a fond farewell. We'll catch you later on this week. Ciao for now.